Welcome to the Black Box App Podcast. I'm your host, Kenneth L. Johnson, founder and developer of the Black Box App. When I'm not doing that, I'm president of the diversity recruitment firm East Coast Executives. Extremely excited today to have a gentleman on that I really respect, and I'm going to tell you how we met in a second. But we have Mark Anthony Dyson on, and basically, I'm going to just give you a piece of his LinkedIn profile header. He hacks and reimagines the modern job search. Always staying ahead of the game. Mark Anthony Dyson, thank you so very much for joining us, sir.
Thank you very much for having me. Glad to be here. Finally, we got this together.
Yeah. Listen, I'm going to be transparent to the audience. This is the second time we've went at this because the file got corrupted. So I had to ask Mark to give me a little bit more of his time and come back on. And it took a couple months for us to make it happen, but this is something I was committed to. And I'm glad that you had enough patience to ride that out with us, sir.
Not a problem. For anything for a friend. We're good.
Okay, I can appreciate that. All right, so
yes, sir.
Many moons ago, it seems like, I'm going to go out on the limb and say, wow, because I was doing the Career Seeker show in Philly. So this was 5 years ago. We were doing a piece during our show in regards to career. It was like one of those career lists, top 10 resume mistakes or something like that. And the article came from Mr. Dyson. And it just so happens that we didn't credit Mark with being the author of the article. We were just running through. So I reached out and said, hey, I appreciate you sharing the piece. Can I get a credit? And that's when we just started having a conversation, man. And I started following your work from that point. And I've just been amazed at not only where you're able to tap in with your areas of expertise, but also the networking and the connections you've made within this space of career professionals. It's pretty impressive. Talk to me about your work. Tell the audience kind of who you are and what you do.
Well, I started out as a career practitioner about 15 years ago. At the suggestion of my brother-in-law, who says you should write resumes. In fact, I'll give you the company name. Him and his wife gave me the company name, and I just ran with it. But I didn't really know a whole lot about the career space, so I started learning. I spent probably about 2 years before I really started sticking my head out and started creating content of my own. Although I made attempts at it, but the more I became educated about it, and having some hiring experience on the end of being a hiring manager for a department that I worked for at the American Bar Association and through the American Medical Association. I got plenty of job interviewing experience there. I got great mentoring there. So a lot of that translated to that space at that particular time. And as time's gone on, I've written more than 900 articles on job search, career, and workplace, and had tons of conversations. I had a lot of clients. I no longer do coaching one-on-one, but I do talk to a lot of career professionals, and people have jumped on the train to follow the journey.
Yes.
And I'm still kicking it all this time. Still got lots of ideas, got lots of things to explore, and lots of things to kind of figure out and help the people move forward.
You know what? I didn't want to jump in that quick, but you took me right to it. So you speak about the future of job search often.
A lot, yeah.
And you positioned yourself as someone who's knowledgeable in that area and kind of thinking it through. So, people are wondering what's happening out here with AI and machine learning and with the prevalence of LinkedIn as a tool and resource to not only job search, but the network and brand through. What is the future of job search as you see it? Like, you don't have to go 30 years down the road, but what's happening right now that you're like, wow, people need to probably pay attention to this?
Well, there was a study back in 2013, 2014 that was done by DeVry University. They had their own committee and research group that looked into the futures of careers. And what they said was in 2020, there'll be a nice chunk of the workforce be working as consultants, and they'll be able to, that include the idea that they'll be able to work remotely, that they'll be 1099 employees. Well, what happened in 2020? A lot of people end up working remote, and there's more that end up working as consultants. So fast forward to 2023 and beyond, we're going to see probably about 40, 45, maybe even 50% of the workforce as consultants in some kind of way. If at least if they do have a full-time job, they will have some kind of consulting job. And I've seen people move into that space a lot easier than they ever have, because for people who really want to, they'll first look at Indeed and they'll look at consultings and they'll get overwhelmed by what's really there. But people who really been able to slip right into it, already have a lane that they're very strong in and have enough experience to where they say, hey, I can offer your company this. So they can go through Indeed, don't apply to the position, but they contact the company.
Yes.
And they contact the company and say, hey, I could fill in while you're trying to fill this position. So they are able to get that. In fact, I have a very close relative that actually, when she left to get on to a government job, her former company said, hey, why don't you stay on as a consultant? And they work around her schedule. So
Wow.
not only she got the pay jump, but she got the other pay jump. And so she's able to work full time, and she is able to work as a consultant. And for the larger part, that's what, if people kept their options open and kept their eyes open, the opportunities are there. Now, I don't want to say that there's going to be a whole bunch of people be able to jump that, but it takes some creativity and ingenuity to make it happen.
Indeed. I'm sure you're familiar with JT O'Donnell. JT was one of the first people that I start hearing, and this was many years ago, start speaking about everybody operating as a business of one. And that's kind of what I'm hearing you speak about, where you're literally contracting your individual services out to maybe a global organization, but not just completely skilled consultants, but people that literally are coming from a place in an organization saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to back out, but come back in as my own entity. And I think that's really interesting, but I definitely see a lot of that happening. So once people start kind of moving in that direction, like people will start having, this is what's interesting. So I want to hear this from your perspective. So once people start moving in that direction, they're literally going to need like a one-pager, like a brag book, to market their services to companies. Our resumes are kind of really trending in that direction, where you're using tools like LinkedIn to kind of show media and show different things that you're doing to make you more attractive to employers. Is that the way we're looking at it? Should everybody embrace that?
LinkedIn is already a brag book, by the way. And I think the resume is, we're not going to say the resume is dead. That's for somebody else's conversation. This conversation is looking at the broader picture where everybody can have access to your experience. Resumes meant that is targeted, and that's for a specific audience. The LinkedIn is for specific, but anybody could take a look at that and to see and to venture how deep they want to get with you. If you're active, you make yourself more marketable. If you're inactive, you're not as marketable. Not to say that you can't get the opportunity, because there's some recruiters, quite frankly, who will target those who have their heads down, they're working, especially in the executive space. They're interested in those folks. However, should you decide to put a shingle out and start posting, you start commenting and start engaging in conversations, you become much more visible. So the whole idea of being visible and marketable and having a portfolio already out there on the interwebs without having any other presence is enough for most companies to start at least some kind of, to kind of creep on your LinkedIn profile.
So as a search firm with a focus on diversity, often we're searching for those passive candidates that you speak about, right? Because typically we're looking at the competitors of our clients. We look at their competitors and just all the players in the space and say, oh wow, Mark Anthony Dyson, he seems to be doing really good work out here. He's not on LinkedIn that much, but I can see his background is ideal for this situation. And then we just pick,
Mm-hmm.
we just touch in and kind of see if we can have a conversation, because not only are those people ideal candidates, but they also know other people with similar skill sets because they're so engrossed in their career and the work that they do. You, when you were doing your coaching, right? How were you
Mm-hmm.
encouraging or directing your clients on how to move forward and just position themselves for other opportunities? That could be jobs, speaking engagements, whatever it may be. What was your
Well, I
advice?
think a lot of I think a lot of people were and at that time, branding became kind of more of a household word at that particular time. And a lot of the clients that I had that were in those professional realms were talking a lot branding. Some really didn't know what in the world they were talking about, but there were others who were around other people who always talked about their brand, and that was amongst the younger Gen X millennial people at that particular time. Gen Z wasn't quite in that realm, although they made the smoothest transition of any generation that's ever been, because some of them had brands because they had YouTube channels, they had other spaces where they were in. But for the most part, a lot of it would stem from the LinkedIn profile and being able to get a recruiter to take a look at them, and then also be introduced to other recruiters that would also, you know, be able to help them with their presence and answer their questions, and also eventually find their ways into getting jobs. Not that LinkedIn is some magic elixir, but really most of the studies between the surveys between 80 and 90% of recruiters are on LinkedIn. Probably far less who really engage on LinkedIn, but they are at least taking a look and creeping around to see who are the best candidates. And also they listen to the conversations that are going on. They're inside those groups. They're inside those cliques, if you will, or inside those communities. And that's where a lot of people do it have been getting jobs. I think in the last 5 to 6 years, they've been involved in communities, whether it's in LinkedIn or their association or organizations, and they find out about opportunities or imminent opportunities, and they are able to jump on those, not necessarily on the job boards or the LinkedIn job application process. Now, they do have to apply to the job, but they find out uh, through the word of mouth. And they're in those places where there are conversations. And that's where a lot of them ended up having to, they made that jump at that particular time. I wish more people would do that now. But I think back then, LinkedIn groups was a real thing, as opposed to now, some groups, yes, some groups, no. But even outside of that, the organizations, associations, just through announcements and getting newsletters, people can put two to two together without really hearing an official announcement that so and so is leaving this position and moving to that position. Oh, well, I had my eye on that position for a while. Why don't I go apply?
You know, I view you as a subject matter expert in the space. And now that you're telling me you're not really doing as much coaching, I have a question for you that I think you can probably be really transparent on now.
Okay.
And I probably had this question a while ago for you, but this is the ideal time to ask it. How do you
Okay.
suggest people vet career coaches? There's a lot of conversation and a lot of people that have jumped in and they claim to be the the magic answer for
Yeah.
people's career woes. And sometimes I look back at some of the backgrounds, and that doesn't mean they're not great at what they do, but I'm just kind of wondering where they even got the experience and or accreditation to operate in that fashion. How would you
Right.
vet somebody?
Well, to give you a little idea of my background, I didn't have a coaching certification. I used my experience from that. I got a coaching certification for personal training.
Okay.
And I also have a master's in training. in adult education and training. So from that point of view, I use some of that. One of the reasons why I got out, because I feel coaching is broken. And when I say that, depending upon who you reach out to as a coach, a lot of them aren't necessarily apprised of a lot of the latest job searching trends. I was talking to someone back in 2021, and they created this content around job interviews. And I said, this is great, but I think you might seem light years behind if you're not talking about virtual interviews at this particular time.
Yes.
And he was like, huh, he really had thought. And this was a very seasoned coach, somebody that actually wrote books and had coaching credentials and even worked with major recruiting firms and consulting firms. And he didn't think about that. And I think that's one of the ways that people can actually start looking at. So are they really up with the current trends? Are they talking about only 5 or 6 things that they can really do? And do those things meet your needs? I mean, coaching is good. The credentials are good. I'm not willing to have that argument and conversation, because there are people who will say you should never hire somebody who doesn't have a coaching credential. But there are a lot of successful people who don't have any credentials, coaching, or not even HR experience or recruiting experience, who do very well in the space. But you got to look at them very closely and see what they talk about. The reason why probably I still get requests for coaching and I have to defer, because of my writing. Okay. I'm out there putting out the content, and I've got 900 pieces of or more of articles that people can vet and decide whether I'm the right person or not. And a lot of times I'm not, because I'm not coaching. And a lot of them are people who are and I don't think I've ever talked about this, but people who I refer to know, a lot of them are the executive types and are looking for the upper tier of opportunities. They're not looking for, the sales positions, the tech positions, unless they're higher on the tech. And they'll ask me, say, are you doing it? I say, no, but I know people who are. So I think the coaching aspect is only broken because at one time when there was exclusive resources for coaches, it worked well, but those resources now for everybody. So really anybody and everybody can do their own job search if they're willing to do the time and the work it takes. But reason why people pay for coaching is because it cuts on their time. They want to get right down to it and they want to make it happen. And that's why a lot of people can charge the few hundred, in some cases, thousands of dollars for that very reason.
Yeah, I think there are people that provide extreme value and just in how they deliver that service. And I don't think it's necessarily related to credentials, having them or not having them, because I've sat in house at places where I thought some of the senior leadership, I thought they did exceptional jobs with mentoring and sponsoring and providing
absolutely
platform for their subordinates to kind of move along within the organization. No credentials at all, but life credentials and how work happens and what you need to do. So that kind of showed me, there are people out here, you don't really need that, but I do think it provides some structure in some cases.
It provides some structure, right? And it provides some structure, and that's a great point, because I think even in the, I think through like last year, you had, I think you were a moderator for the Black Men Excel conference, and a lot of those guys, any of those guys I would have hired as a coach. One of them was an executive coach, if I'm not mistaken. But the other two,
You may be referring to Donald Thompson. He's amazing, man. He's a really
He's
sharp
a
guy.
CEO. I think he's the
Yeah.
CEO, right?
Yeah.
He's executive. He doesn't need any credentialing
He does.
because he's a wealth of knowledge, and it was obvious. But so were the other two young men on that
Sure.
stage were amazing, and they would be great to add to the coaching network, if you will, if they want it to be. But having said that, there are those who do who had learned how to game the system. And that's unfortunate. I think you get that whether they have a coaching credential or not.
Good point.
But I think people need to discern and take a look at people for a while. And if they have videos to look at their videos. If they have podcasts, they're great resources. If they're just talking about the same 5 things, then there's something that you need to do some more vetting of them. But if they have a breadth of work and is deep and is wide and they have results, I think it might be worth taking into account that might be the right coach for them.
We're on the Black Box App podcast with Mark Anthony Dyson, career services professional. To me, I'd love to throw extraordinaire on the end of that. Over 900 pieces of work. He's doing exceptional things out here. I really have a lot of respect for this man. I want to speak to you. On the Black Box App podcast, we get to a point where we ask 3 questions, and I'm getting ready to shoot them at you, right? First question, what advice do you have for young entry-level Black men that are looking to kind of establish themselves in a career?
Internships and apprenticeships. Do lots of them before you graduate. And even if you graduated, still do them. Do them for the next steps you want to do if you get another job. The reason why those are important, because you, as we kind of hinted right before, you do a lot being around the guy that's actually doing the job and are in the careers, and that they're actually mentoring, and they are in mentorship mode. That's better than another piece of paper. Although you may need to have one, but a lot of times to see it in action, to see the way they think, makes all the difference in the world.
Yes, definitely. Love that answer. All right. So people get the internships, apprenticeships, they're doing the work, or at least seeing the people that are doing the work at the next level. Now it's time, and they're working mid-career. What should they be focused on as they're into their mid-career professionals? They're 7 years in. What should they focus in on to advance their careers?
Well, probably depending upon where they are in age, you're probably thinking about how life is going to take them along with their career. So the biggest difference in kind of a hybrid of our previous discussion is that you can get the real career track by talking to other professionals, not just in the networking internship, that you're part of the organizations and the industries that you want to be in, and having lots and lots and lots of conversations along those lines, because that's going to inform you in finding out who's doing what you want to do, and you follow that trail.
Gotcha. I love it. As senior level professionals right now, as we are, what should we be doing to help support, nurture anyone that's under us looking to advance?
Well, I hope that if you're at that level, that you've always mentored others. I know that I kind of passed on that to my son. Even when he was in college, he had mentees, and he was also being mentored. And even now, after all of his accomplishments, he still has a team of mentors. And I think you should always have that as a CEO, kind of a table of rivals, if you will, sort of like the Knights of the Round Table, so to speak.
Yes.
Where you have different personalities, you have different approaches, and you have different ways. And, somebody may not be named Sir Bors, but that he has a certain MO and moves a certain way, and you can gather a lot of intel from around that and be able to pass that on and pass other people on. When you used to talk to older people about jobs, especially if they're not telling you all these techniques that you and I talked about and all that. They refer you to a person. They said this person's doing this and something, and you can learn this, this, and this. And here are the people, and they'll give you 4 or 5 people for you to go and start doing your homework. So they're not telling you to get the job, they're telling you to get the knowledge. And the knowledge will bring the experience, and experience will help you find those jobs eventually. You still have to do the strategies, but to enrich in your experience throughout time, if you're always looking upwards, that's going to make the biggest difference in your world.
Man, get the knowledge, professional development, be a continuous learner, all of that stuff I completely agree with.
Yeah.
So this is a question that I just thought about as you were speaking earlier that I wanted to get in before we take off.
Okay.
So, there's a lot of conversation out here right now, Mark, with these companies asking people to come back in after they've worked remote or hybrid. What are you hearing, or what are you seeing, and where do you think it's going to go?
We're going to have a hybrid. There's some companies they're accepting that, but I think people are getting most of the people who are stuck are already stuck in that situation. They were sold a false bag of goods. They said, well, we're going to stay remote. And then when everybody start opening up, when the competitors start having people backing off, never mind, bro, we need you back in the office.
We're coming back.
And companies lied. I mean, you think about companies lie. And, before the pandemic, they were saying there was no way that we can go remote, except for these few chosen golden childs that we have over here. But when the pandemic, and when they realized that, that the only way to continue work is for remote work to happen, they say, hey, we found ways for you to be remote. Isn't this great? Aren't we a great company? Then when they found out that I could call out names, but I won't, but they said they found out that their competitors are having their workers back, and they said, nope, got to have you back in the office. Better for business. It's better for the young workers to have that touch. I'm not saying there's not benefits to being in the office, but you think about the pattern that says you told them no, then you told them yes, and then now you're saying no. Think about what message is that going to send for your future of your company, because people are going to remember that. Trust me, it will all come together. Now, had you said these are the possibilities, fine. Or if you said, this is for the time being, it's going to be on a case by case, a moment by moment, fine. But some companies set themselves up for failure in the long run, because we got it documented. It's well documented who said what. So I think that's where the future of work is going to be tied up. But I think people are going to abandon eventually the full-time employee model. Well, I think that's going to, people are truly going to have to be consultants. They're going to have to be 1099, or will have to be both in some kind of way.
I'm glad you added that end piece on, because my next question was hybrid as a policy or hybrid as a privilege. But to you, what you're saying, it sounds like, is that hybrid by your own decision.
It's going to be hybrid. What's going to be interesting is that will they pull the wool over everybody's eyes and say, well, you could be a consultant, but we need you here in the office. I wonder how that's going to work.
We're going to find out for sure, my friend. And I know how we'll find out, because you'll be writing about it. I'd like to thank you so very much for just offering your expertise, man, and being part of the Black Box family. I've always valued you as a person and as a professional in this space. And, I do indeed consider you a friend. Let everybody know how they can stay connected to you and the work you're doing, please.
Mark Anthony Dyson on LinkedIn. And pretty much you can Google me under Mark Anthony Dyson. Of course, the voiceofjobseekers.com is my home, and where a lot of those articles lie.
Mark Anthony Dyson, the voice of job seekers on the Black Box App podcast. I'm your host, Kenneth L. Johnson. I'd like to thank you. You'll be able to see this episode. We'll have it on YouTube feed. We'll have it in the Black Box app, and it'll be on Frontliners TV as well. Once again, I thank you for joining us, everyone. And Mark Anthony Dyson, keep up with his work. Trust me, it's benefited me, and I've used his content in the past. I'm sorry, I borrowed his content in the past, and that's worked for me. Thank you so very much for joining us.